New overnight, the U.S. and Iran begin indirect nuclear talks in Oman. The White House says President Trump is demanding zero nuclear capability from Tehran. Listen.
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
I hope they realize that already. Retired Vice Admiral and Navy SEAL Robert Harward joins us now. He led invasions in Afghanistan, Iraq, grew up in Tehran. He is now a member of JINSA's Iran Policy Project, and we welcome him now. Admiral, great to see you. Your thoughts about what the objective you would have going into these talks, knowing Iran can't be trusted. They weren't fulfilling the other deal we signed off on that brought us to this point to begin with.
Well, I think it's clear this administration, as previous administration, would not tolerate Iran to be a nuclear-armed state. That started with Obama, carried through Biden, carried through the first administration of Trump, and now. So that's very clear. That's going to be unacceptable. And again, that can be, if they try to rebuild and reconstitute, they can strike again. So I think that's the top of the list. But I think more importantly, where we are now, and the president has made this clear previously, they have to reduce, if not eradicate, their strategic missiles, the threat they pose to all the allies in the region, and then finally, stops funding surrogates, stop exporting the revolution to Lebanon, to Gaza, to Yemen. So those all three conditions are essential, and you can't address one without the other. If you want enduring stability and peace, you got to address all of those issues.
And Admiral, the thing is, there's conflicting reports on whether they're going to talk about anything but the nuclear program. Remember, they changed venues, went from trilateral, multilateral, to just, we want to deal with the U.S. directly. Here's a statement from coming out of Iran going into this. Iran enters diplomacy with open eyes and a steady memory of the past year. We engage in good faith and stand firm on our rights. Commitments need to be honored, equal standing, mutual respect, and mutual interests, and not rhetoric. They're a must on the pillars of durability and strength. They also went on to say, from a different person, the Iran's former Minister of Cultural Heritage, the Strait of Hormuz will be a place of a massacre. Warned that if we do attack, they're gonna block that.
Well, look, Iran has been very good on rhetoric. They're always talking. The capabilities are not the same as their rhetoric. Sure, they can challenge the Straits of Hormuz. They can strike that. They can put mines. But we have the capability to counter that. And so I think they're pretty weak at this point. I think that's what everyone needs to keep in mind. Iran is at the weakest position they've ever been. They've been neutered
right. So,
in
Admiral,
terms of the ability.
I agree with you. So what would you do with this? So what targets would you hit? What would help the situation to give the Iranian people a shot at a degree of a say in their government?
Well, again, I've been very clear on this previously. I think strikes, the allies in the region are concerned about the strikes. So the real points are, how do we support the Iranian people who have really become a main threat to the regime? Can you get communications to them? Can you get weapons to them? Can you do that? And so any strikes should be in support of that effort. And again, I would focus on the IRGC headquarters, their barracks, where they have the forces and where they're projecting power to repress and kill the Iranian people.
Do you
this
think
has
that
to come from within?
I hear you. The Ayatollah and IRGC, do you make a dissemination between the two? Can you get rid of the Ayatollah and tell the IRGC you'll have the keys for a while while keeping an eye on you?
I do not believe so. I believe the IRGC is a core element of the regime's power and has to be dealt with. In fact, the mullahs you can get at any time. The IRGC with hundreds of thousands is the bigger threat. And so I think you have to address that problem, and those would be very likely targets should we adapt that strategy.
Yeah, hopefully we contacted people in Iran, then maybe we identified some people we can work with. That could be part of it, too. He grew up there. He knows the region, and he helped us in Iraq and Afghanistan, serving his entire career in uniform. Vice Admiral Robert Harward, thanks so much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.